Okay, shalom everybody again, and welcome to OneShul. For those of you who do not know me or haven't been here before, my name is Brian, and this is our Monday Night Torah study, which we like to lovingly refer to as Monday Night Mitzvah. We look at our Torah portion for this week and see how it still has relevance and speaks to us in our lives as Jewish people even today in the year 2013 of the Common Era where we're at now. We're looking at our Torah, which was given to us by God several thousand years ago, and studying the genius of it, and we can see that it still speaks to us even today. It's not an archaic book or an archaic story or a book of laws. It's a very living document that grows with us and lives with us and breathes with us and is always relevant to us, even several thousand years after it is written. So to get right into our good stuff for tonight, first off, let me start by letting you guys know that our class tonight I have interestingly named and titled, Are You Smarter Than a Donkey? So with that, we'll start looking at the Parsha Balak, which is, if you're following at home there or wherever you're at with your Torah in hand, it is the book of Numbers, chapter 22, verse 2, through chapter 25, verse 9. Now, before we get into seeing what the interpretation says to us, let's first just take a nutshell overview, look at and see what our story says to us for this week, and it sort of brings up to speed as to where we're at this portion of the Torah and our Torah story. So, as we pick up, we find that Balak, who is the king of Moab, he summons the prophet Balaam to curse the people of Israel. On the way, Balaam is berated by his donkey, who sees, before Balaam does, the angel that God sends to block their path. Three times from three different vantage points, Balaam attempts to pronounce curses, but each time blessings issue forth instead. Balaam also prophesies on the end of days and the coming of Mashiach. The people then, as our story progresses, fall prey to the charms of the daughters of Moab and are enticed to and fall into idolatry. They idolatrously worship the Moabite idol Peor. This causes a plague to come from God as punishment upon the Israelites, and we're told that 24,000 Israelites die as a result of this plague. Now, when a high-ranking Israelite official publicly takes a Midianite When a Midianite I'm tongue-tied here. Let me try this again. When a high-ranking Israelite official publicly takes a Midianite princess into a tent, the Israelite Pinchas kills them both. We're told that he takes a spear and pretty much gores them both through the stomach, killing them both, and this then stops the plague that was affecting and basically killing the people of Israel. So let's get into our interpretation. Let's take a deeper look and see what the Torah is telling us, more like what deeper meaning we can find that's deeper than just words on a page. So we'll go back to the beginning. We'll start with the section which I refer to as Balak's BS. Okay, this is kind of ironic. What he does is that, in an ironic twist, the king of Moab, Balak, attempts to enlist the services of the prophet Balaam in order to place a curse on Israel. Now we're told that Balak sends his representatives to Balaam, inviting him to come to him, telling him that he'll be well treated, well taken care of while he's there, basically trying to roll out the red carpet because he knows that Balak, he knows that Balaam, there we go, Balak knows that Balaam is a prophet of Hashem. He knows that he gets visions from Hashem, and Hashem speaks through him. So he wants to enlist Balaam to try and to use him to get him to curse the Israelite people as they move through the land of Moab. At first Hashem states to Balaam that he must not go to Balak, for Balak wishes to curse Israel. So a second time, upon further insistence from Balak, Hashem then tells Balaam that he may go to Balak. After, first time Hashem says, no, don't go. When I always confuse this too. When Balak further insists, he seems very insistent on it, that he's like, no, Balaam, please, come to me, I want you to come to me. Upon his further insistence, God sort of, I don't want to say relents or yields, but he sort of is like, all right, you know what, if you want, you can go to him, but you must only say and only do that which I instruct you to do. The idea is that ultimately God would still prefer very much if Balaam did not go. Let's see where I'm at here. Balaam then departs to go to Balak. We find out then that, basically, like as I said before, God said, all right, go ahead and go. Just only do what I tell you to and say for you to do and say. But we know that Hashem was like, as one of these, all right, go ahead, but I'd rather you don't. When Balaam goes anyways, we find out that this actually does anger Hashem, and he sends an angel with a withdrawn sword to obstruct Balaam's path. Sarah adds that I read that this is representative of free will. Very, very much so. Very much so. It's, God saying that, I'm not going to completely bar you and say, no, you absolutely cannot go. I would prefer that you didn't, but if you do, at least do this. At least, if you're going to go, which I really wish you wouldn't, go ahead. If you have to, if you feel you must, go ahead and do it. But at least give me God's like saying, at least give me this little concession that you at least only do what I instruct you to do, and only say the words that I have put in your mouth. So as we find out that God sends an angel with a drawn sword to obstruct Balaam's path. Now, the Torah tells us that at first Balaam is unable to see the angel of the Lord, but however his donkey does. His donkey sees it, and it results in his donkey turning off the road which he was traveling on, and they go into a field. So Balaam obviously kind of ticked at his donkey for this. He gets off the donkey, berates it, and proceeds to beat his donkey. Yes, Adi says Hashem tells Balak not to go or speak own words. Exactly. Hashem sends the angel of death to block him and his donkey free. Yeah, no kidding, his donkey totally freaked out, and it's a progressively worse freak out. So we see at the first time as the donkey sees the angel, that it tries to sort of run from it, and because the donkey just freaked, because obviously it's seeing an angel standing there with sword drawn before it, so natural reaction of an animal, it's going to be frightened and freak out. The donkey then turns off, and they end up in a field. So Balaam is angered at the donkey, so he whips the donkey, pretty much beats the crap out of it. And then he gets back on the donkey and start riding on forward again. The angel then appears a second time. This time it causes the donkey to veer out of the field, but onto a narrow, easily obstructable path. So again, Balaam gets off the donkey again, proceeds to berate and beat the donkey, because again he's like, why are you doing this? You've never done this before, and he's obviously peeved at it, kind of pretty much annoyed. So at this point they're going down a narrow pathway, and the angel sent from the Lord with the sword, with sword drawn, appears a third time, this time completely blocking the path. So the donkey sees it again, totally freaked out. It's like, and of course, because in a way it's cornered. The donkey there's only one way forward on this narrow path. The donkey at this point cannot deviate to the right or the left. Shalom, Aubrey, good to have you here. So the donkey can't deviate right or left. It's just straight forward on this narrow path, and there's an angel of the Lord blocking the pathway with sword drawn. So at this point, the donkey sort of just, we're told that it lays down. It's cowering in fear at this point, because it is just scared beyond its wits. Again, Balaam, he's really, really peeved at the donkey at this point. He beats the donkey again. At this point, we're told in the Torah that God gives speech to the donkey. The donkey's mouth is open. And the donkey turns to Balaam and says, why are you beating me? Now, we're told at this point, which I find really interesting and kind of amusing in a strange way, he sort of proceeds to argue with his own donkey. I know if a donkey opened its mouth and started talking to me, I wouldn't be as concerned as much about arguing with it. My first reaction would be, holy crap, you're a talking donkey. You can talk. This is amazing. But Balaam argues with it. Donkey says, why are you beating me? And Balaam's like, well, you keep doing this. You keep veering off, and now you won't go forward. And the donkey's like, have I ever done this before to you? In all the years that you have ridden upon me and traveled with me, have I ever done this to you before? And Balaam's like, well, no, you haven't. At this point, Balaam's eyes, his ignorance is yielded. His eyes are open to the fact he can now see. He can see also the very angel of the Lord standing there before him. The angel of the Lord reveals itself to Balaam and informs that, in essence, the donkey has saved Balaam's life. Okay, for it was able to see what Balaam should have seen. Yes, Balaam sees the angel of death. Yes, Adi. Now here we learn that ignorance, because in this instance, Balaam was kind of sort of stuck one-track minded. He's like, I'm going to Balak. I have to go to Balak. He got stuck on that certain track of mind. We learn that ignorance, whether it be intentional or unintentional, can be seen as, harmful, even sinful in certain circumstances. Let me say this again. Here we learn that ignorance, whether it be intentional or unintentional, can be seen as sinful, and in certain circumstances cannot be viewed as or used as an excuse to explain or condone one's actions. In this instance, Balaam, being a prophet, places him in a position of greater responsibility than the average individual, or in this case, he's in a position of greater responsibility, more so than the average Israelite. And as we all know, with greater responsibility, it makes such errors or ignorance, a little bit more, or even that much more, inexcusable. When you have greater responsibility, it works to take any possible mistakes that you could, slip up and make along the way. It takes a little even like a slip of the tongue, or maybe you missing something, and it makes it that much more a huge mistake when a position of greater responsibility rests on your shoulders, as it obviously does with Balaam, because in a way he speaks for God, because the Torah tells us that he is a prophet and that he gets visions from the Lord, and Hashem tells him what to do, what to say, like to pronounce blessings or curses on people, as Hashem instructs him to. Hashem said that Balaam could go to Balak, but this was only after initially saying to him that he could not. This tells us that even though eventually Hashem did tell Balaam that he could go, he would very much rather prefer that he did not. Again, comes back to what we were saying earlier about free will. Balaam was ignorant to that in this instance, where a regular person could have been excused for such an error of ignorance. You're not gonna hold it against the average person or the average Israelite for not noticing that there is an angel of the Lord who's manifested right in front of you. But because Balaam was a prophet, and it makes that all the more important. It's like, you know what, dude, you shouldn't have missed that. Balaam was ignorant too in this instance, where a regular person could have been excused for such an error of ignorance, because Balaam is told to us to be a prophet. Such ignorance then becomes inexcusable when made by him. With great position, as I was saying before, with great position comes great responsibility, even to the point where mistakes caused by ignorance, as innocent as they may be, in this case, can be met with harsh rebuke. Sarah says the sages compared Balaam unfavorably with Abraham Avinu. Yes, but shouldn't have God intervened after all? Isn't he responsible for all of his creatures? Stuck. That argument could be made, but also we know that at times God doesn't intervene in the ways that we would expect him to, because certain times he puts all of us to certain tests. It's kind of like God giving you a pop quiz, and it's not because God's trying to mess with anyone or to be cruel or anything like that. It's just God knows us. He knows how people work. He knows how the human mind works, and he knows that from time to time, to keep us sharp, he's got to test us, test our faith, test our knowledge of knowing what to do in a certain situation, knowing the difference between right from wrong. It works to keep us sharp, and it works to keep us on our toes. And as we see here, that God even tests his prophets. So, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to add up to this point before we move forward? Any comments or anything? I have an idea if it still stands. Anything you guys want to add? Any questions or anything? Just feel free. Interrupt me. Have at it. It's all good. So now we get to the point where Balaam has arrived. Okay, he's arrived in Moab, and upon Balaam's arrival, Balak takes him to 3 different vantage points, each vantage point offering a view of a portion of the Israelite people as they're moving through. And the Torah tells us they're referred to as being so numerous that they completely blot out the earth from underneath them. There's so many of them moving all together, and it's so densely populated that as they're moving, you cannot even see the ground beneath them. So that gives us a really good visual idea of just how many people that we're dealing with here at this point. Now, each time that Balak accompanies Balaam to a certain vantage point, he desires Balaam to pronounce a curse over Israel. And each time Balak becomes extremely angered because each time, instead of cursing Israel, Balaam gets word from HaShem, and instead of cursing Israel as Balak desires, every time at every vantage point, Balaam pronounces a blessing over the people of Israel. He says that no harm, each time he says, no harm should come to them, no evil shall befall them. These people are blessed. Balaam pronounces blessing over them each of the 3 times, and these blessings have come from God. And then we also learn further, which we'll discuss this a little bit more afterward, is that Balaam is also given prophecy concerning the coming of the Messiah, which I think is pretty cool. Now, we learn also here is that, Balak wants the people cursed. He wants ill to befall the Israelite people because he's threatened by them. So, he goes, and which I think is kind of a sneaky, dirty, underhanded tactic. He figures, you know what, I'll go get a prophet of their God, and I will try to convince them to, put a curse on these people so that bad things will befall them, so they'll be driven out, and they'll keep clear of Moab. And so, he gets a prophet of our Lord to try to get a curse put on us, God's people. And every time, instead of instead of cursing us, Balaam blessed us. And it teaches us, and we learn here, that if God blesses something, then it is blessed. If God curses something, it is cursed. If God has blessed something and you try to get someone to pronounce a curse on it, it's not going to happen, and it's not going to work, because once God has given his blessing to something, then that's irrevocable. Once God has blessed something, then that's for all time. Good night, Stuck. Good to have you here. Thank you for coming. Okay, now before we move more forward to the plague that was resulted as of the goings-on of Israelite men with Moabite women, does anybody have any comments they want to add to the discussion? Any questions they'd like to ask? But let's hear from you guys. What are your thoughts up to this point? Anybody yet? Adi, are you referring to? Yeah, that you're referring to Balak. Yeah, I could just. To me, it makes me picture like some old movie or cartoon where you got some evil villain who's just totally hell-bent on making his evil plan, come to fruition, and he thinks he's got the perfect scheme set up, and then it all just falls apart in the end, and it's foiled, and he's all like, curse you, and then it just gets all like bent out of shape and everything, and then runs off, disappears. He's like, I'll be back, I'll get you again. It makes me picture that. Yeah, his blood was boiling at that point, because as Sarah just added, and thank you for adding that, no way could he curse Israel. Israel was blessed by God. The only the only one at that point who could curse Israel would be God, and any blessing, and also for it to be any blessing or any curse that would really have any merit or value or really stick, that would have to come from God. So God has blessed Israel. If God has blessed Israel, no man can curse Israel. Sure, they can utter the curse, they can pronounce the curse, but it's just words. It's just empty words with no meaning behind them. There's no force behind them, because you cannot curse what Hashem has already blessed. And yes, Adi, steam coming out of his ears and all. Yes, sir. Okay, so as our story for this week continues, from here we're told that some Israelite men sin by they're essentially having relations with Moabite women. And as a result, they're drawn into idolatry because of them. We're told that they're drawn into and seduced into idolatrously bowing down and worshiping their deity or god or whatever that we're told is named Peor. Now, because of this angers God to the point of him causing God to send a plague upon the Israelites. And this plague results in the death of 24,000 Israelites. And we're told that the plague is only ceased when the Israelite Pinchas, he takes a spear and kills a high-ranking Israelite and the Moabite women that he has attempted to take into a tent. Basically, he grabs a spear, gores them both through the guts. They die, like right through the stomach. They die, and that was enough to abate God's anger, and thankfully the plague stops at this point. Although, at this point Israel was about 2 million people, and we're told that 24,000 of them died as a result of this plague. That's not no chunk change small number. That's nothing to laugh about. That's a pretty good sized chunk of people when you think about 24,000 people who were there beforehand who now are not there. Yes, the worship of Peor was particularly gross. Very, very well put. If Sarah, if you'd like to explain that, if you'd like to explain that, I'd rather not talk about such nasty things and have them documented, just because it is really, really, when you guys are talking about it right now in the chat, it is really nasty. So gross. So basically, the idea comes through again and again and again. Idolatry is bad. Worshipping idols or other gods is bad. It makes God angry. And especially when it's idolatry involving the ways of worshipping Peor, really bad. Don't do it. It's just, Well, Lucy, the men did this for the sake of the women, yes, and it was also seen as a way of sort of symbolically almost humiliating yourself before Peor, because if you humiliate yourself before something, it's seen almost as like, it can be seen in this way as a sort of like an ultimate subservience in a way. It goes beyond, prostrating yourself before something in a worshipful manner. It's like I said, humiliating yourself before the deity, before that which you're worshiping. It's basically saying, look, it's not just that you as the deity are higher than me or better than me. it's saying that I not being the deity are so low that I'm expected to do this. Yes, thank you, Sarah. Total subservience. I'm expected to be totally, completely subservient, even to the point where I will ridiculously and disgustingly humiliate myself before you. So, as we know, that is not what our wonderful HaShem is about at all. Yes, we do worship Him, but HaShem does not expect us to or want us to in any way belittle ourselves or humiliate ourselves before Him. HaShem wants us to be our partner in creation, not His humiliated slave. Well put, Lucy. I mean, attending foreign dinner parties is one thing. Yeah, that's really, really well said. Really well said. I like that. Okay, so pretty much, we've covered the pretty much, the entirety of our Parsha for this week. Now let's look at some relevant topics that we can find in here that speak to us. They involve us. They speak to us. They touch our lives as Jewish people, even to this day. And shalom, Elizabeth. I didn't see you come in. Do forgive me. Now let's see some topics that are relevant to our lives, even to this day. Now, from the story of Balak and Balaam, it tells us, and something that we've known all along. It makes a point to strongly reiterate to us, and we've discussed this and touched on this a little bit earlier this evening, that we learn that no man can curse what God has blessed, and that no man can bless what God has cursed. And again, God restates here through Balaam the very promise that He made to the patriarch and our ancestral father Abraham, and He repeats it through Balaam almost word for word. God tells us that he who blesses what God has blessed shall be blessed, and that he who curses what God has blessed shall be cursed. It almost an exact resaying of Genesis 12, where HaShem says to Abraham, "He who blesses you, I will bless. He who curses you, I will curse." It's almost word for word here. And as we look at it, let's look at what happened then. Balak was a Moabite king. Okay, he tried to curse what HaShem has blessed. I don't see any Moabites around anymore, or the country of Moab anymore. Do you? It tells us that what HaShem speaks is true, and follows through on His word. And if He pronounces judgment either way on something, that's it. That's it. That's permanent. God blesses something, it is blessed. God curses something, it is cursed. If God curses something let me say it again. If God blesses something and you come along and try to curse it, I really don't want to be you at that point. Another point that we can find is that, I find this to be very, very interesting, is that God, in His might and His power and His majesty, He can take from that which He has declared sinful or abhorrent, or has even declared to be an enemy. Okay, and in His wisdom and might, He can take from that very thing, and He can use it and turn it into something that brings about the ultimate goodness, that can bring about, not just goodness, but in many cases, the ultimate goodness. Prime example of this is let's look at it this way. Let's look at this. Think about this. Okay. From our Parsha this week, we find that HaShem finds that Israelite men who have, basically fooling around with, having to do with Moabite women, because it led them to idolatry. But we find that it angered HaShem very much. And on top of that, because the Moabites and their king tried to pronounce a curse on Israel, and we as Israel are blessed by God, we're God's chosen, so don't want to be trying to pronounce a curse on us because it's going to come back on you. So we get the opinion that, God's not very, at this point, God's not very fond of the Moabites. However, when it comes to the idea of God able to take from something that, he is maybe declared, seen or declared as, that, he doesn't like it. He'd rather not have to do with it. God can still, in his majesty, can still take from that and use that to bring, he can use it for a tool for goodness, and he can use it to bring the ultimate goodness about. Case in point, we read a story later on in the Tanakh. Hold on, Aubrey says, though one has to wonder just how bless is meant. On what time scale? Abraham was promised blessings and 400 years of slavery. Likewise, scroll back up here. Where was I at? Likewise, Balak prefigures years of exile. True. Is that a delay in the effectiveness of a blessing? If we were bestowing a blessing, where it may not be a blessing in terms we understand, somehow part of the blessing. I would say it tells us that, Aubrey, I would say that with the idea of the blessings is that, we have to trust God's timing on it. If that is any kind of answer, or maybe I'm reading the question wrong. But I would just say that, you have to trust God's timing, where God does give blessings and make many prophecies and say, I will do this, but he doesn't always give a time frame with it. So that's on us in a way we have to be the ones to be patient. And it's like what I'm just about to go into in reference. We're still waiting for the coming of Mashiach. It's been prophesied. God is going to send us Mashiach. He hasn't yet. It's still going to happen. It may be 5 minutes from now. It may not be for many, many years from now, but we just have to trust and wait that it's going to happen. Now, Sarah, your comment, a great comment. She says, but King David, and thereby Mashiach, is descended from the Moabites. Exactly. That's exactly the angle that I was working towards. We find this later on in the book of Ruth, which is in the Ketuvim, towards the back of the Tanakh. It's the third section of the Tanakh. We see that obviously at this point, we can see that God really doesn't seem to think very much of the Moabites, especially Moabite women. However, we find out later on, as we read on, there was a Moabite woman named Ruth. Okay, Ruth eventually became a convert. She converted and became a Jew. Basically, she's like, your people. She said to her mother-in-law, who she honorably stayed with and kept together with, even after her husband had died. She kept with her mother-in-law, and she said to her, wherever you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people. Your God shall be my God. She's basically saying that the Israelite people shall be my people. Okay. Your God, HaShem, the God of Israel, will be my God. This was a Moabite woman. This former Moabite woman, now converted now a Jew, went on to have a son named Jesse, who he went on to have a son named David, who we later come to know by the title of King David. And as we know, as y'all had mentioned, it's through King David's line, through King David, that we will get the Messiah. Mashiach will come to us from that line, from King David. So we see that God in all of his majesty can take something, even from something that he sees that he could maybe despise or see as deplorable or whatever. He can take that, and in his greatness and in his majesty, he can take that and turn it into something and make something really, really, really awesome come out of it. I like to think of it as kind of like a beautiful rose that grows up through a crack in some old nasty pavement or concrete or something. Something wonderful and something beautiful coming out of something that's seen as, maybe not so great. That's God essentially making Mashiach come from what could be seen as Moabite roots, even though we see here that God at this point doesn't think very highly of the Moabites. Hence, that's could be a large reason why we don't see any Moabites around nowadays. Now, final point that I'll bring up tonight. Like a mother, I can punish my child, but you cannot. Yep, exactly. Sorry, I'm just reading what you guys are saying because so much goodness going on in the chat room right now. Forgive me, I seem to be falling behind on that. Okay, now before we draw things to a close tonight, because our hour is nearly drawing to an end here, one more thing, and this pertains to us as the Jewish people. It's also one of the things that has caused a great number of other people, non-Jewish people actually, to give us a lot of flack for, and it is something that we learn and is contained in our Parsha this week. And it comes from Book of Numbers, chapter 23, verse 19, where God himself, he's talking about himself here through the prophet again. God tells us, speaking of himself, he says that God is not man to be capricious, or mortal to change his mind. Would he speak and not act, promise and not fulfill? Now, anybody want to offer take a guess at as what guy from another religious tradition that uses our Bible, who does that verse rule out? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Anybody want to take a guess? I'm going to go off into speaking of yes, Lucy, you're on the right path. Yep, Rebecca, you got it. That Jesus guy. Christian tradition, Christian faith uses our Bible as well. They take our Tanakh and they insultingly refer to it as the Old Testament. I guess trying to imply that, our laws and our ways and even our God of sorts is outdated. Well, we won't go into that too heavily right now. But just the idea is that, they have their idea that their Jesus. Reorder looks and change the words. Exactly. Or go in there with a black ink marker, cross out what you don't like, and write in what you want. That kind of works in a better context. Yes, Lucy, we're just hardcore old school. The Christian tradition tries to say, that Jesus was God, that he was God incarnate. Basically, the idea is that they believe, and unfortunately, many times throughout history, have tried to force on us, and it ended up being pretty ugly for us for a while. The idea that God had come to earth. God had impregnated a virgin so he could have a human body, so he could come to earth and live among us. Okay. Now, I don't know how they can rationalize that, because as the verse I just read, Numbers 23:19, God is not man to be capricious, or mortal to change his mind. Would he speak and not act, promise and not fulfill? Okay. If this Jesus character was God, that would mean that God went and turned around and did something that he said is not him. The idea that, God became a man. God became a mortal man. God lived among us. How can that be? We know that that's not true, and that it cannot be true, cannot ever be true, because basically God himself tells us right here. He says that God is not man to be capricious, or mortal to change his mind. Would he speak and not act, promise and not fulfill? We could read it a different way, but still get the same context, is that if God himself is speaking to us, and God seems to like to refer to himself in the third person sometimes, but we put in first person, you have God saying, I am not man to be capricious, or mortal to change my mind. Would I speak and not act, promise and not fulfill? God's telling us a very, very deep and profound truth about himself that other traditions that have come along that try to hijack our Bible, basically use our Bible, use our scriptures, and try to pervert it to meet their ends. It's kind of, to me, not just as a Jew, but as an intelligent, educated human being, it baffles me very much that how they could take something that says something so point blank. God is telling us here, I am not a man. I am not mortal. I am not a human being. Then how can that be rationalized into supposedly God later showing up on the scene again to come to us, the Jews? God shows up in a way in which he had told us point blank through his prophet and through his Torah that he would never do. When you think about that, if people would just, think about that and realize that, I think it would be a little more easier for them to understand why we, as the Jewish people, for 2,000 years now, have rejected the character of Jesus. We reject him as the Son of God, because the Son of God would mean that God has some dividability, and then they came up with their idea of a Trinity, which is God existing as three in one, which that just makes no sense. And then, they had the idea of that Jesus is God himself incarnate. That is totally blasphemous to us. And then they came up with the idea too that Jesus is the prophesied Mashiach of our Bible, even despite the fact that of the qualifications that one must meet in order to be the Mashiach, Jesus did not even complete one of the he didn't meet one of the not even one of the qualifications, didn't measure up to any of the criteria, nor did he accomplish even one of the tasks that Messiah is to accomplish. So this right here, it formed, where we see here, Numbers 23, it forms the basis and the boundary of why our rejection of Jesus is so, on what bounds, and then it's further expounded on later. Lucy says, I wonder if it's translated the same way in the Christian Bible. Lucy, what I can offer and say about that is that translations of how the Tanakh is translated in a Christian Bible, in the section that they refer to as the Old Testament, it is just loaded with what could be referred to as pious frauds. A key example that immediately jumps to mind is Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Now, from the original Hebrew, Isaiah 7:14 talks about, the Lord will give us a sign. And it says, behold, the young woman shall be with child and have a son. Okay. Now, the original Hebrew word from that verse of Isaiah 7:14, the original Hebrew word used is Alma. And Alma from Hebrew translates and means simply young woman. It says nothing about this woman being a virgin or anything like that. Yet, if you look in most Christian Bibles, when they reprint and translate Isaiah 7:14, they print it out and read it as, behold, the virgin shall be with child and shall have a son. Right, Audie, even he said to a young woman or a maiden, yes. Nothing about, in the original Hebrew, nothing about virgin is mentioned at all. Yet if you read it from a Christian Bible, it attempts to, and if you're not Jewish or unfamiliar with the Hebrew text, it will have you believing that God said that a virgin will get pregnant and have a child. It's basically, it's a pious fraud. It's basically what they do is they translate things in ways and means that fit the way they want the end to be. Where for us, we read it from the original Hebrew because obviously that's what HaShem wants us to do. We read it, and if it says this, okay, that's cool. We leave it at that. It says Alma, which means young woman or maiden. So, behold, the young woman shall be with child. Okay, cool. The word virgin doesn't even have to come into our minds at all. There's a lot of mistranslations and such in how our scriptures will be translated to fit what they call the Old Testament of a Christian Bible. They also do think there are a lot of instances where they will cite a certain verse, say in the gospel, in one of the gospel stories, and they will say is that this was done to fulfill the prophecy spoken by this, and then so we go back and look through our scriptures, and it turns out that either, number one, the prophecy that they're mentioning, the Old Testament prophecy that they're referencing, either doesn't exist, was grossly mistranslated, or they only took a section of the larger chunk of the scripture, allowing them to interpret it entirely out of context to fit, their ends and their means. Basically, they do the whole not reverse psychology, but they sort of, reverse engineer and, do a lot of reverse detective work. Is that where they, usually it's like, okay, here's, we use this with our, prophecy of the coming of Mashiach. Okay, we see the criteria, the facts, what we have to have. Okay, what this person, this coming person, he or she must be and must do, and the criteria that they must meet in order to be Mashiach. Okay, and then from that we can draw a conclusion. Okay, of when someone shows up, or anything we can, when someone shows up who we could suspect of possibly being the Mashiach, we have all these facts which we can hold up and use as a litmus test of sorts to see. Good night, Sarah. Thank you for being here. But getting back to what I was saying is that with Christian tradition, we see this with how they interpret our Bible. We see it with how their New Testament works. Everything they start with. They don't look at it as, okay, here are the facts. Here's what we know. What truths and conclusions can we draw from this? They start the other way around. They're like, they start it with, here is the conclusion that we want. Here is what we just automatically believe is right. What facts can we find or doctor up to support this? Not a very good way of, looking at God's word and applying his wisdom and his teachings to your life. So basically, to bring this to a close, morals of the story. Okay, what God blesses, it's blessed. You don't want to be cursing or trying to curse what God has blessed, because it'll come back really bad on you. God can take anything and use it as a means for good. Talk about Ruth the Moabite, grandmother of King David. That so far has turned out pretty well, and we have faith and we hope that one day it'll ultimately turn out really well for us. And now that Jesus guy, written proof of why we can pretty much just dismiss him as a heretic and a blasphemous Jew. So, does anybody have any questions or comments before we draw this to a close? While you guys are taking time to gather any thoughts for comments or questions, real quick, donations are good. They help us here at OneShul. That asking going rate is, we ask about $10 for a class. If you can help us out, please do. That'd be really, really appreciated. While you're still working on any questions or any comments you have, just to those of you who maybe haven't been here before, who don't know me, again, my name is Brian. If you want to be in contact with me, my name is the first name in the chat log. That is my Facebook, which has links to every other way you can get in contact with me. If you have any questions or comments for me, or just want to drop a line to say, hey Brian, what's up? That is cool. So I love being in contact with all you guys, and I like to try to make a point to have good conversation and get to know everyone who comes here regularly, because then it feels less like Torah study and I'm the rabbi leading the Torah study or something like that. It just feels like I'm just hanging out with my friends talking Torah. So If you want to be in contact with me, go ahead and add me. That would be totally awesome. You're very welcome, Audie. And again, thank you to our attendee and our friend, Mr. Audie, the Hebrew Hammer Smith, who from now on is working as he'll be moderating my classes when I'm here. Yeah, basically working to keep our classes blessedly troll free. Thank you very much, Audie. I appreciate it very, very much. Well, thank you, Lucy. I'm really glad I'm really glad you were here. Anybody have any questions or comments before I sign off here? I will be around in the chat room for a little while afterwards once I get everything archived and saved. And so just give me a few minutes with that. Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you for being here. I love your input and your questions because they blow my mind and just really challenge me and really make me think, and it's so invaluable. Thank you for being here. Elizabeth, thank you. All right, everybody, if there's no questions or any other comments or anything, I will say good night and ahava and shalom to all of you guys, and hopefully I will see you all here again next week. Look forward to being with all you guys. God bless each and every one of you guys. Take care and be well.